the religious system, the education system, the environmental system, the political system, the financial system. All of those need to shift and change in order for us to be a civilization that works together and not apart. We all need to step into a service to others role in order for this to really work. And then we can step into that galactic civilization energy where we can really advance and move to the next level. But we can't accept extraterrestrials as our brothers and sisters before we accept ourselves as our own brothers and sisters, you know? That as a possibility has come through in the past month as a timeline that could absolutely derail every single system, because in that moment, everyone would have to question the authenticity of every single system.
Elizabeth, April, welcome on Just Tap In. What are you most excited about right now in your life?
That's a good question. There's a lot of things that really excite me right now. And I think in general, right now, where we're at, 2025 feels really exciting because things are moving so rapidly. And I think at a personal level, there's been so much work that's been done in 2024. I mean, I think a lot of people can agree that 2024 has been unlike any year that we've experienced so far on many levels. And so I do feel like there's something big coming in 2025, both collectively and individually. And I think it's going to look very different for everyone depending on the work that we have shown up to do, you know, or maybe not so much shown up to do. So that's sort of my biggest excitement right now is sort of this surrendering anticipation energy for 2025.
And you've been showing up for quite a long time now. And I know that as you brought up 2024 before going into what's coming for 2025, you said this has been the craziest year, both energetically and emotionally. You've had a back-to-back ego deaths. You said it's been kicking my ass. So I know for a lot of people that watch you, you are a reflection of them in many ways. What have you been going through in 2024 that has led to these ego deaths? And what can we find on the other side of something like an ego death?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, I was 2 weeks into this year saying I've had 10 ego deaths so far, and we're on the second week of January, you know? So it really did hit me hard. And yeah, I mean, at a physical level, a lot of weird like injuries, aches and pains, like health issues that I've never before experienced, getting sick, which I usually don't ever do. And then at another physical level, like everything has been breaking down. Like, I mean, we're talking like water softener, oven, fridge, car, like just physical things in my life breaking down. Just really random stuff, but it's been all at once this year. And then, yeah, and then on the emotional front, just a lot of vulnerability and feeling the need to let go of whatever the other identifiers are for me. And I've done pretty good at sort of not necessarily attaching or holding on to identities, but it really went to such a deep level. And it got to a point where, you know, instead of saying, okay, I think I'm finally done with the breakdowns and the breakthroughs and the, you know, and another challenge and another challenge, and, you know, I'm over it. I'm at a point where I'm like, it doesn't have to be over because I'm okay with more challenge. And I've gotten to a point where even in a bad day or a challenging day, I can have gratitude for the challenge. So not only is it hindsight looking back saying, wow, like I'm so grateful that thing broke down because it allowed me to fix it or rearrange or organize or whatever. But now I'm in the challenge saying, wow, isn't this really beautiful that I get to have such a challenging day, or I get to feel this way because I know that this isn't going to last forever. So I think that there's just been sort of the way that I've described it to my community is everything that we have been pushed to learn in the past, especially 4 years since 2020 for a lot of people. And for a couple of people, it's been long before 2020, but everything we've been experiencing and pushed to learn, we're now being forced to put it into practice. Great, you know that thing, but can you actually live it? Can you actually be in it? Without resistance. And so that's sort of where I've been at. And I guess on the other end of that is freedom, right? Because what's happening is anything that's breaking down right now, both physically and emotionally, energetically, those are just aspects of our lives, of ourselves that no longer align to a higher frequency. So, you push and you push and you push and you get that push back. It's clearly just not in resonance with the highest possible timeline. And there's a lot of people out there that maybe aren't spiritual or just aren't aware, and they're still pushing back. And so it really does require a lot of vulnerability to be able to let go and surrender and be okay with having absolutely nothing. And at that point in time, you gain access to everything. And that is true freedom. And I can't say that I'm fully there yet. I'm still on the journey of breaking down and breaking through, but I'm just so, so grateful for this year, despite the nonstop challenge.
Hmm. And I think a big turning point for you was, as someone who is on this mission work, and a lot of people tuning into this feel like they're on some sort of mission to raise consciousness in their own unique way. But I think a turning point for you was when you started asking, how can I receive more? Instead of, giving constantly. So what are some ways that you've been learning to receive now to be able to create that balance?
Yeah, I'm definitely like an overproducer. I'm always motivated, always energetic, always go, 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 always want to accomplish a million things at once. That's how I've always been. And this year, especially with the ego deaths and the health issues, I haven't had the capacity to do that. I haven't had the capacity to be in my natural, normal state. So I've been forced to say no more often. So whereas I would, go out to a lunch with a friend or hit the gym or do all these things, I've been saying no more often and allowing myself to take a nap in the middle of the day, or ask for help, which is really tough when you're not used to asking for help. And so, part of me is like, well, if I can do it myself, I'm going to do it myself. Like, why would I bring anyone else in? And so once again, a lot of surrendering, a lot of vulnerability, a lot of asking for help. I mean, with receiving it, you do have to be blatant about it. It's like, yeah, you can ask, the universe for what you want, but you can also ask your friends and family for support too, when you're not used to doing that, whether it be like a nice home cooked meal or, a break from your toddler or whatever. It's so important to ask and seek help from the community that you give so much to. And I think a lot of starseeds are finding that this year as well, as they've been forced to stop and slow down and ask and receive.
Hmm. What are some of those questions that you found a lot of people and starseeds in specific have been asking themselves, and maybe what insights have come through those questions that are arising most often?
Right now, what I find, because there's so many different stages that people are in, I would say for the people who are not yet quite awake, the biggest questions is the existential crisis. Like, I really think that at an individual level and a collective level, it's like, who am I? Where am I going? What do I want? Who do I want to be? Like, we're talking like, and I think every ego death has all of those questions within that as well. But a lot of people are experiencing that for the first time, the real deep internal soul searching, which then leads to a myriad of breakdowns and breakthroughs, which is always so much fun. And then for the sort of the starseeds who have been through that phase many times, now I find the biggest questions that they're asking is, what am I here to do? How can I show up? How can I support? Because especially in 2024, right? We're getting forced to go through it, to put all of our lessons and information and knowledge to practice and to action. And the world is needing us more than ever. So there is this deep internal need. Like it might have been just a wisp of an energy before, but now it is like it is a truck coming at you, like you need to do something. You need to step up. This is your time. And it can be tough for a lot of starseeds because the world needs us. And if you're not clear on what that mission is, then it can be really tough to feel aligned to what you're here to do. And I do want to just mention as well, especially from my community in particular, there are a number of these really old souls and starseeds, cosmic volunteers that are actually in retirement. So I call it starseed retirement. So the problem with that internally is lifetime after lifetime on this planet, they have had a clear mission. You're going to be a healer. You're going to be a prophet. You're going to be a teacher. You're going to be this. This is how you can help. And their whole life is dedicated to that. And they give and give and give. And then in this lifetime, they decided to come back to simply clear karma and enjoy being a human. And that is very difficult to accept. I always sort of liken it to going to the doctor. You have all these symptoms and you do all the checks and the doctor's like, well, nothing's wrong with you. You've got a clean bill of health. Sometimes it's more difficult to not get a diagnosis than to get one. Okay, great. I have this and I'm going to go ahead and bring solutions to solve it. Okay, great. This is my mission. I'm going to go ahead and, make my life about that thing. But if you get the diagnosis that, hey, you actually don't have a mission, your mission is you. Your mission is showing up and enjoying and receiving and being human and working on your karma. But there's nothing more that you have to give. That can be so difficult for so many starseeds. And I get that because we're so used to just doing and producing and helping. But we also have to remember and realize that there are all of these new humans. There's all of these brand new starseeds that have never been to planet Earth, that they have the energy, they have the motivation, they have the mission, they have the direction, and they're here to pick up our slack where we haven't had that support before. So we felt like Atlas, right? Like everything's on our shoulders and no one else is going to do it for us. So I think that that's really a lot of the struggle, even for myself. Like part of me is like, I've got to do it all. And then I have to remember, no, I have support, whether that be friends and family or just other starseeds who are on the same mission, who if I need to take a day off, someone else is going to step in and give the same information because this is just universal truth. So that's sort of where I think a lot of starseeds and retired starseeds are at right now, is just really figuring out what they're here to do, if anything.
So you feel there is that possibility that in this lifetime we can sort of retire or have like a cosmic retirement from our mission that our soul chose to be here for?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was all pre-contracted and predestined. So it's not like a decision like, yep, I'm going to retire halfway through my life. It's like, no, you really came here to once again just clear the rest of your human karma and then to understand what it's like to receive, to not actually have a mission where you're just constantly giving. And that's one of the hardest lessons, I think, for any starseed, is to learn how to receive. So it is a really big undertaking. And so I just think that it's so pivotal and so important. And a lot of starseeds that I've channeled their Akashic records and past lives and their soul contracts, they could have cleared their karma and done this work lifetimes ago. but they chose to hold off to come back for this time in particular to watch it all unfold. It's like, this is it. We have finished the marathon, and now we get to watch all of our hard work play out, And so in so many ways, it's supposed to be a time of that great shift, and just to hold space, to be here in a higher vibration, to hold space. You don't always have to take action. And that's something that I think we're just not talking about enough.
It's like we are reaching the end of a cycle, and this is like the season finale, and a lot of us are here to watch what is unfolding. What are we necessarily getting our popcorn ready for, during this great shift?
Yeah, great question. I mean, take a look at the world, right? We're in a predicament. We are in a time of peak polarity. And as much as I'd love to say that that's going to go away in 2025, I know it's not. I know it has to get worse before it gets better. I've been saying that for a number of years, but I just don't think the next 4 years things are going to get. I think we're going to see little like glimmers of the new Earth frequency and solutions, but we've still got to collapse the old system. We still have to collapse the old Earth. So that's really what we're getting our popcorn out for, is to watch the old system collapse, and then to watch those new starseeds hard at work to say, let's bring about environmental solutions. Let's rid the world of plastic. Let's find new solutions for packaging. Those sort of real world solutions, I call them new Earth solutions, And so that's what we're observing. And I think part of the problem with the majority of humanity and starseeds as well. And a couple of years ago, I was really, I think, emotionally charged around what was happening, because what I saw was all the starseeds who are so powerful and so magnificent getting roped up into, you could call it the Matrix or polarity or just the show, the illusion, the bullshit, the projection. They were getting so roped up in choosing a side. And I was so confused. Like, why can't you see that this is the old Earth? Both sides are the old Earth. There isn't one right now that's the new Earth. We actually haven't seen that as a side at all. So in order to weather the storm of this old system collapse, we need to be above it all. And I'm so happy to say that was probably back in 2021. I was getting very concerned, and even 2020, very concerned. And I get it. The whole conspiracies and agendas, like, that's my world too. Like, I observe that constantly. But it's so important to not feed your energy into that old system, because that's what they want, right? So nowadays, I do see people being able to take that higher path a lot faster or a lot easier. Of course, that's a lot saying, we're right before the US election, and polarity can't be higher right now. But I do see people being able to shift out of the illusion a lot easier these days.
And I think a key word that you said in there was observing these other agendas, and observing the world of conspiracies and everything. Because I remember when I started, I was heavily in that rabbit hole of YouTube, just consuming these theories. And I think this happened to you as well, where you started receiving these psychic attacks by focusing a lot of your energy on the darker agendas. How did you cope with that and navigate for someone that also might be going through these sort of psychic attacks?
Yeah. So it was about 4 years of deep diving into, the lizard people and the cloning and you name it. And once again, still to this day, I remote view and see all of that stuff continuing to go on. But at a certain point for me, the biggest switch was, okay, there's got to be something more, right? It can't just be dark and dark. You know what I mean? And my whole world was consumed by just the Illuminati and the agendas and the conspiracies, the dark side of this world. And so finally, when I stopped and asked, there's got to be a different perspective. Like, it can't just be all evil, you know what I mean, out there. And the second that I questioned that there's got to be something more than that, because I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, that's when things started to elevate, and I got introduced to the Galactic Federation. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, there aren't just like bad aliens abducting us. There's good ones too that are vying for us. And same thing, there's not just dark entities, there's light spirits, you know, etheric beings that are here to elevate us. And so, once again, it goes to show, like, that's the binality of this universe, right? Like, this universe is polarized as well. And that's why we have to have the amount of suffering that we have here, so that we can learn from it, grow from it, and then choose a different side. So you just have to get to a point where you're done with just all doom and gloom, and you're ready for something different. And the second that you're ready for it, it will come to you, because the light is always existing, just like the dark is always existing. And so we have to really choose where we want to sit, you know, in this plane of existence.
Walter Isaacson is this investigative, you know, journalist that writes these mega biographies on certain people like Einstein, you know, different people that have created mass influence in the world. And I know you dedicated your time to read Elon Musk's full biography, which is like, I've seen the book in person. It's a pretty thick book. What have you learned about his soul contracts right now on Earth?
So fascinating. Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely believe he is an interdimensional being. Like, he is definitely a starseed, especially with his need to help advance humanity. And with that, just like many starseeds, I mean, he's definitely neurodivergent. He thinks a different way. He communicates a different way. He interacts with society a different way. And sometimes it comes across as a dick, for sure. But that being said, he is here to make a huge impact, and he is one of the most brilliant minds of our generation. I mean, and there's no doubt, no question about that. I was a little disappointed recently to see that he turned so overtly political. But hey, like, I'm not one to judge. So objectively, when I take a look at his energy, and this was maybe 6 to 8 months ago, so things do change, but it's like, he hasn't necessarily chosen a side, and it doesn't mean that he has to choose a side. But also, the path forward looks very different when you are choosing a service to self path versus a service to others path. I think what he's trying to do for humanity is a service to others. It's let me help advance you as a collective. And there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into pushing to advance the collective, but also he needs to be it's almost like he needs to find a bit of spirituality. He needs to understand the universe from an energetic perspective and not just a physical one, right? Because he's very focused on technological, which is, you know, hardware and software, but he's missing sort of the undercurrent of what vibration is he choosing. It's like he's undefined up until this point, which is awesome because he's undefined, but also a little bit scary because he does have pretty much all the money and all the influence. And in that way, I think that he won't get as roped into or as influenced, say, by the Illuminati and by the dark side if he is such a powerhouse and strong independent player within his own right. And then sometimes he can be a little bit of a child as well, which is also a little bit concerning because is there that influence there? Like, does he have the integrity and the morality that's needed to piggyback what he's doing in society? So it's such an interesting journey to follow, and I'd be really interested to see sort of where that ends up. But I mean, no one can deny that he really is pushing us forward. I just hope that, especially with the AI and the robots and the Neuralink chip, like, there's a lot of concern in that. And I hope that he is measuring for that.
Do you think that all of these technological advancements, if we take someone like Elon Musk, like the archetype of him being so focused on developing, as you said, the hardware and the software, but maybe not so much the spirituality, how is that linked to maybe what happened in ancient times during Atlantis and what eventually happened to them?
That's a great question. Yeah. So the links are there. Part of the reason why we have to experience so much corruption and so much suffering and so much top-down pyramid energy is what happened in ancient Atlantis. And Lemuria was pretty advanced, but also pretty like balanced, I would say. And then, some of the Lemurians wanted to branch off and sort of create their own civilization, and they did. And they were given all of the advancements. So not only did they have like spiritual and energetic abilities like telekinesis and things like that, but they also had the technological advancements as well. And a big part of what they were doing was like genetic sort of modifications, and they really pushed the boundaries. And the problem back then is it's sort of like, just because I'm a mom of a toddler, it's sort of like giving a toddler all the candy or all the toys or all the things. It's so much that they actually don't have the awareness of too much of a good thing is no longer a good thing. And so this is what Atlantis did. They really pushed too hard. They had no sort of understanding of the corruption, the unhealthiness of it. And so Atlantis fell, a big part for that reason. It just got out of hand. And so what's interesting there is that there's a lot of Atlantean individuals who are reincarnating in this lifetime, and they're the ones putting a huge stop to a lot of our advancements. Not a stop, but more so just the concern is coming from them. Like, whoa, 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 we've been here before. Let's learn from our mistakes and understand that these technologies can be misused. These technologies can be corrupted. It's not just all like, let's go, go, go. It's really, yeah, I think there's a quote, and I forget who said it, but it was something along the lines of, just because you can doesn't mean that you should, right? And we're so focused on, can we do this? We're not enough focused on the morality behind it or the checks and balances behind it to say, is this morally aligned to what we should be doing right now? Just because we can, should we,
Yeah, for sure. And, knowing that your last lifetime here as a human was, within the gray extraterrestrial civilization, I feel like there's been a lot of misunderstanding. And now that you brought up like the genetic modification that was going on in Atlantis, we've heard a lot about the grays and the hybridization programs. What are the biggest misconceptions that we've been fed, in media about the grays that you would maybe sort of like to clear up since you've had experience being within that civilization?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, one of my, I would say, like closest cosmic lifetimes was tall gray. And I was an ambassador for my civilization at that time. And we were, and probably still are, the grays, specifically the tall grays, highly genetically advanced, right? So, and the problem is that we got so genetically advanced that we just started cloning, the best make and model of our body, and we cloned ourselves so much so to the point where, our cells started to die out pretty quickly, right? Like that half-life, like we just couldn't actually, we didn't have enough diversity to be to have the longevity. And so this is when the Galactic Federation called us in, and this was a long, long time ago. And we said, hey, do you think you could help us? And they said, yes, but only if you help us. And so we started working with them on our genetic advancements and hybridization and ability to do that. And then we started working on the human hybridization project, which was essentially taking our DNA, splicing it with humans, and helping to advance human beings on this planet. So part of us now, we have a bit of that gray DNA, but we also have Pleiadian and Anunnaki and Reptilian and all the other things. I think we have around 20 different extraterrestrial DNAs here. Which is amazing, and it makes us incredibly powerful hybrid beings. And then there's sort of like this other project that's taking place, which is the human hybridization project, which is sort of the half gray, half human hybrids, which are also called the Sasani or the Esasani. And so that's sort of the future humans. And eventually the Galactic Federation want to introduce them to humanity because right now they're living to about 150 years. And, there's a lot of other benefits, also like intellectually, emotionally, extremely high IQs. We're talking like 220 IQs. And so that's sort of one end of it. But I do want to say that what we have heard about the grays, it's not wrong, because we don't actually realize that there are tens of thousands of gray species in the universe, like if not more, like potentially millions of gray species. So if any human were to look at a gray, just a generic gray extraterrestrial, they'd be like, well, yep, that's a gray ET, that's a gray alien. But their facial features, everything is different, right? So these are many, many different subspecies of gray. There's good ones. I literally just call them the good grays and the bad grays. And there are bad grays. I call them organic robots, right? Where different alpha draconians or the reptilians can actually sort of control these robotic grays and from a distance. And that's a whole thing that is happening. And so I can't say that any theory is wrong, because there is a lot going on. There's a lot of different beings interacting with us. There's a lot of different agendas. So to say that all aliens are bad or all aliens are good is wrong. To say all grays are bad or all grays are good is wrong. And so I'm lucky to be a part of the good ones, but it's a lot of people get freaked out when I'm like, yeah, like I was a gray, and like that's one of my predominant, cosmic alignments, even though right now the majority of my communication is all Pleiadian, because they're the ones who are really showing up for humanity. So so that's sort of, I guess, maybe the misconception, but it's not really, because it is happening.
Why are Pleiadians showing up the most right now for humanity?
Yeah, I mean, I think many reasons. Like, we have a lot of Pleiadian DNA within us. And just the other night, I channeled how the Pleiadians, trying to think if I can get that information back. I wrote it down somewhere. But so I've always seen like, okay, the Anunnaki spliced their DNA with us. Some of them even procreated with us. The Reptilians, same thing. They used a little bit of technology, and then they used also just like straight up procreation with humans to create the genetic hybrids. I've always been huge question mark around how did the Pleiadians splice their DNA with us? Was it up on a ship in a petri dish or something different? And what came through, and like I said, I don't have the full details because I don't remember a lot of what I channel, but I was meditating a couple weeks ago, and it was during the time of Lemuria, and it was a vibrational shift. It was, what was it? It was something like, I can't get it back, but basically it was during the time of Lemuria when the Pleiadians came down and merged with us, but more so at a vibrational or energetic level. It was more etheric. It was more of like an etheric merging than anything. And it actually shifted and changed our genetic makeup and our physical appearance. And we even got taller and things like that. And so, I'll have to get that information back at a different point. But the reason why the Pleiadians want to help us so much is because they are really big leaders in the Galactic Federation right now at this time. And they have the emotional capacity to really understand what humans are going through, opposed to many other different extraterrestrial species that do want to help us. They're almost so different and so far removed from the human condition and the human suffering that it's very difficult for them to sympathize with, well, why can't humans just come together and realize how powerful they are? Like, why can't they just come together and say, hey, we're all human. We all deserve access to like basic human rights. Like, you know what I mean? I think for a lot of ETs, they have a lack of compassion for us because we're just not figuring it out and not like loving each other like we should. But of course, we've been very manipulated. So the compassion, the leadership, the technological advancement, the unconditional love, like the Pleiadians have all of that. Not to mention, we really are their children in so many ways. So they're the ones who are really heading up a lot of the projects to intervene or to help us and assist us at this time. But they're definitely not the only ones. But for me, they are my main point of contact.
Is there a certain set of regulations where these beings can intervene in whatever's going on, unfolding on Earth?
Yes, there are. Yeah, it's pretty complex, but it's something that I'm so curious about. Like, I'm very curious about systems, right? Like how systems work. And one of the things that I've been asking for over a decade now is, all right, Galactic Federation, like, how do your systems work? Like, what if something were to happen that you need to intervene on? And they're very strict in their policies around intervention and specifically non-intervention because it is a universal law, right? We've got the universal law of cause and effect, which is essentially karma. We've got the universal law of non-intervention, which essentially states that every being and every civilization have their own free will, and you can't override another being's free will. And despite us wanting to think that the system as a whole or the Illuminati or the Reptilians have been overriding our free will, it hasn't been happening. We have been choosing this path for ourselves. We've been influenced to choose the path, but it is our choice. And so the only way that the Galactic Federation is allowed to intervene, and that goes through many different councils, and there's like voting on that. Like it's a huge decision in when it gets to that point. But it's if our collective contracts are if something happens to misalign our collective contracts, they're allowed to intervene to help us get back onto our collective contracts. Like, for example, if you are supposed to take an exit point at like 89 years old, all right? And then at 25, you get into a freak car accident that was not contracted to happen, and you almost died. Your spirit guides are technically allowed to step in, intervene, and all of a sudden you're like, I floated out of the car and I don't know how that happened. That's an intervention that was technically allowed because it's just them helping you align to your highest soul contracts. So that's really the only case where the Galactic Federation is allowed to intervene. And most of the times, intervention from their side happens when intervention from the other side takes place to sort of pivot us off. So that is why we have to have good because we have bad, or high because we have low, and low because we have high. So they're constantly needed because they are opposing forces.
The law of polarity. And
yep, gotta love it.
I'm also very curious about how systems work. And I love that you said, the new Earth systems that are going to be put into place. But in order for that to happen, many may need to shift or maybe even collapse or fall. Do you see these systems out in the world? Like, we're talking religion, education, government. Is there a domino effect where if one of them falls first, the other will follow? And what would that one be if it had more influence than the others in any way?
That's a great question. So it's a really tough question to answer because there are so many different nuances involved, so many different variables involved, so many different timelines and complexities involved. I would say if there were to be a domino effect, I mean, it could happen in so many different ways, but it could come through as a global war. It could even come through as a civil war right here in America. It could also come through as a financial crisis, a global financial crisis as well, which would really pivot and force all of the dominoes to fall. And then the other timeline that I've seen that has really come through in the past month has been global contact, right? Global cosmic disclosure. That right there, like I'm saying, like if we saw someone, I always like go back to the example of like a musician on stage in front of tens of thousands, shape-shifting into a giant reptilian. Like if we had full disclosure, but let's just call it reptilian disclosure, right? Not like UFOs in the sky, but like a reptilian shapeshifter shapeshifting in front of the entire world. If we had that, we would have to seriously question everything, all religious foundations, all government foundations, all financial foundations, because I truly believe that if humanity can get on board with not just like, yeah, the rich rule the world, and we know that, but there's an off-world species that are here, that are not us. They're not human. We could get behind basically that as the common enemy, which is, terrible to say, but hey, people have to get behind an idea, to get behind they are different than us. We are all just human. They've been creating all of these wars. How about we all get together and say, what do we need? What do we want? Not what they think we want or think we need for us, right? They've been in power. That as a possibility has come through in the past month as a timeline that could absolutely derail every single system, because in that moment, everyone would have to question the authenticity of every single system. And like this whole Diddy thing is happening, and it's sort of like the Epstein and the Weinstein and like this sort of disclosure that's taking place. But come on, let's take it a step further and understand that there are sacrifices, there are rituals. It goes deeper than that. And it goes deeper than that because they aren't just human, right? They sold their soul to the devil, but who is the devil? And if we disclose that, we just upend everything. And that would be really ripping the Band-Aid off. And I am so fucking here for that.
Me too. And I got back from Egypt and I had been disconnected from what was going on in media. Went on TikTok and I'm like seeing all these videos of Diddy and I'm like, what is going on? And maybe even that disclosure that you're talking about of someone shapeshifting, it's literally happening. Like we're seeing their true form.
Yes.
Maybe not in the physical form, but we're seeing their true form.
Yes.
And I did want to ask you, can you sign your soul over to another entity, organization, or person? Because I've heard that in some theories, but I didn't know if that's actually a possibility that you could do to sign it over.
Question. Yeah, so you can't. Okay. So you actually can't. And I'm glad that you asked this because I've sort of made this distinction myself to my community recently. Whereas, a lot of artists will say, like, I signed my soul over to the devil or whatever, right? For fame. Like they will sing about this. Like it'll be very blatant and obvious. But you can never sell your soul. You can never sign your soul over to anyone else. Like what you are doing is you're selling your body. Right? You're selling your image, you're selling your body, and your soul just takes a back seat, and then a different soul, really a reptilian soul, steps into the body to control it. So you're not ever selling your soul. You can't do that, but you are selling your body for fame and riches, and essentially for your vessel to be used in that lifetime.
Is that something that you can undo? For example, if one of these artists said, I don't want to be part of that anymore, can they get out?
So from a spiritual perspective, absolutely. They're able to sort of reconcile, right? And be able to find a different path. Or like if someone were to raise their vibration high enough, that reptilian entity or reptilian soul, it just couldn't exist in the body anymore. This is why they continuously do rituals and sacrifices and things like that to continue to lower the vibration so that the reptilian can continue to exist in that body. So absolutely, from a spiritual perspective, it's possible. The system of the shadow government or the system of the Illuminati does not allow these individuals to ever leave. And the biggest reason behind that, and I've been saying this for many, many years, just because I've remote viewed these rituals, I've remote viewed these situations, which are incredibly disturbing. They videotape the rituals. They videotape the sacrifices. They record it for blackmail. And what are we seeing with Diddy? We're seeing that he had cameras in every single room of every house that he owns, because if politicians, celebrities, whoever, if they were to ever say, you know what, like, this is weird, this is getting weird, I can't be a part of this anymore, like, I'm going to leave. nope, we're going to release the tapes, we have something on you. And, yeah. And so I truly believe that what's happening right now is that the white hats, I really don't like that name, but let's just call them like the good guys, okay, on planet Earth, this organization. I think that they're stepping in and they're purging out a lot of the systems, a lot of these organizations. And what's funny is Diddy's kind of been just like laughing through this whole thing because he's thinking, they got my back. Like, they are the top politicians. They are the richest people in the world. They rule the world. Like, there's no way I'm going to be convicted. And the fact that he is getting convicted is a really great indication that the white hats are stepping in. They do have the power. And what's really exciting about all of this is that every other celebrity, and it's also sort of unfortunate because they're all victims in their own right, although they agreed to do all of that for fame and riches, they are also victims and they've been scared, I bet, their whole lives. And now it's all coming to a head and it seems like none of them are safe anymore. A lot of them are leaving the country because they're done with Hollywood, right? So they are trying to escape right now. And that sort of fallout of influence hopefully will lead to more whistleblowers based on the real shit that's happening, not just these white parties, but a lot more than that. So we'll see, but we do see the cracks starting to form and that organization starting to crumble at a rapid rate.
I mean, it is what you said, the year of the great reveal. And I think another of the things that is being revealed to the surface is our own greatest gifts and potentials, going even into the DNA. You talked about the genetics and how we have a makeup of 20 different species. A lot of DNA activations might start coming to the surface. I witnessed that firsthand in Egypt when people were just activating. And I wanted to ask you how you feel that will unfold more on a collective scale, where people will begin activating their dormant potentials, their gifts, to literally become humans 2.0.
Yeah. It gives me full body chills just thinking about it because it gets me so excited. And I've been saying more and more that I want, like, one day I want to be out of a job, right? Like, I don't want to have to be needed anymore. Specifically because I believe everyone can channel, everyone can tap in, everyone can gain access to universal truth and information. And so that'll be the day that I celebrate. Absolutely. Is when it's like, well, no one needs me. Fantastic. Because everyone's there already. And I think that the huge, massive solar flares we're getting hit with are a big part in our DNA activation. However, if you're holding on to trauma, whether it be past life or childhood trauma, if you're holding on to resentment or anger or even aspects of identity, you're gonna be forced to purge that out with these solar flares coming. And then you'll be at a place of activating the higher frequencies, but we got to purge the lower before we get to the higher. And I do want to let people know, just at a very real level, what an activation feels like and looks like. Because I've had my fair share of activations and it's been really incredible. So, I mean, of course it looks different and feels different for everyone, but the one that comes to mind that I've heard other people having is it could be such a nondescript moment. Like, for example, I've been activated quite often when I'm driving in my car. I think that there's a certain state of mind that we get put into. I don't know if it's like alpha or beta or whatever. I don't know all the different levels, but we get put into a certain state of mind. It's like very meditative, right? Hopefully you're not stuck in traffic, but even still, a lot of the time I've been driving and like listening to certain music, right? And not anything in particular, but just something that I feel. And in a moment, I start crying. And it's like I get struck with this, I mean, you could call it godlike frequency. It's like this uncontrollable joy, like the most amount of elation, joy, that you've ever felt before. And you're just crying and sometimes laughing and crying. And you just get these full body chills and you're just struck with this energy. And for me, that's sort of been more of the visceral activations that I've received of just this moment of like, holy shit, like we're here right now. Like look at, I can do stuff with these hands. Like I'm in this body, like I'm in this car, I'm in this room, and like I'm in this life. Like it's just this moment of complete consciousness. That's what it is. It's this complete conscious awareness. And also like unconditional love, right? To the fullest extent. And I know that in those moments, every cell of my being is getting activated because I'm bringing through that unconditional source frequency and love frequency. I will say too, like, and I've said this before, but one of the ways that we can connect to source frequency is through Tantra and onking, right? I mean, and that's, and I've pulled a lot of that information from the ancient Egyptian mystery school. So I had a full lifetime where I was in the ancient Egyptian mystery schools, and a lot of it was about how to connect to source frequency and then reverberate that source frequency through our body to be healthy, to live longer. And the easiest way to get to that place is through orgasm, And so I've said that before, and it's kind of awkward to talk about, but we don't talk about it enough. And on top of that, this is why there's been so much and continues to be so much sexual trauma, is because the orgasm energy is no longer pure. It's been tainted by things like porn and past abuse and things like that. And so we also have to get to a place of sexual liberation too, in order to have that pure connection. But I also believe, because I am a big practicer of Tantra meditation, Tantra and having that sort of an internal orgasm energy, we call it an orgasm, but it's more so just that pure connection to source. It doesn't have to be sexual. And in so many ways, it's not a sexual thing. So it's almost like healing ourselves, reverberating that frequency, connecting to that source energy through deep states of meditation, practicing Tantra, and then being able to onk that Tantra energy once it's in to reverberate through your body. So those are some of the keys that we need to keep in mind when having those upgrades and those downloads and getting activated, and knowing that we can passively get activated just from the solar flares and from having those aha conscious moments. And then we can be a little bit more active about the activations as well and call them in. And sometimes it means a full sleepless night of your mind just going wild because you are getting activated in that moment. And you're like, this isn't what I thought a spiritual awakening would be, but it is. It's all of that, Once again, we got to purge out the old energy to get to the new.
Beautifully said, beautifully said. And even your example of going in a car, listening to music, or even listening to a podcast, I have had so many of those, where I've had to all right, let me just pull over right quick and let this energy flow. But, talking about purging the old, a lot of that has to do with, old relationships and things that are no longer aligned with people in our lives. We're an interpersonal species. So I wanted to ask you if it's possible to have relationships with other humans without creating that karmic entanglement necessarily that might, bring us down in frequency sometimes if we're stuck in those lower emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. So the answer is absolutely. I actually just did a whole video on past life regression and clearing your karma. And I've been taught, this is not my own information, I've been taught that it is completely possible to be in relationships with people and to neutralize the energy around it. While you're in it. And so there's three things. This is what I said in my video, and I'm going to try and remember them. There's like an equation. Okay. There are like ingredients to relationships. So there's three ingredients that we need in order to live a karma-free relationship with either you and your child, or you and your parent, or you and your partner, or you and your coworkers, because there is so much entanglement. There's so much emotion. There's so much projection. There's so much ego involved. So one is communication, right? So both you and the other person have to be willing to communicate in order to clear all the karma, right? As you move through life. Two is honesty. You have to be honest. If anything, dishonesty and not being integral and authentic is probably the biggest contributor to karma, because you're lying about something. So then that spirals off into something else. And then everything's confused. Nothing is real because it's all just a projection. And then I'm trying to think about what the third thing was. So it's communication, honesty, and I want to say it might have been integrity or authenticity. But it's important for both people to show up with those three things in order to live karma free. And that's the new earth relationships, right? And what's so incredible, since the beginning, it's been 6 or 7 years now, but with my wife, I've never had a romantic partnership where we've been both completely karma free. I never hold anything against her. Well, sometimes I blame her for things, but that's like my projection. But there's nothing old that either one of us are bringing through. There's nothing we're harboring. There's nothing we're hanging on to. And yeah, you got to show up. It takes work. It takes the integrity. It takes the authenticity. It takes the honesty. And it takes sometimes a great 4-hour conversation to clean that out and to have it be so neutral. And these are the things that I'm really trying to show up for with my son as well, is just to be really honest with him and really communicative and really integral, and hoping that if both me and my wife show up that way, then he gets to show up that way to the world as well.
That's one thing I wanted to bring to the surface, is because I've seen how people in my generation have taken the stance of like, oh, I'm not going to have kids because I don't want to take on any more karma. Like, I just want to do my work here and then I'm out. You know, now that you're a year and a half into raising a child of the new earth, what has motherhood been like for you in raising the children that will be the leaders of the future?
Yeah, I mean, I've said it that I've never met a more judgmental group of people than meeting other moms. Like, I mean, whether it's in person or online.
The real life Karens?
Yeah, the real life Karens. I mean, it's all parents just judging other parents. And it's a little unfortunate that way, But that being said, I think it's just honoring that everyone parents their own way. And for me, I mean, I think we have such a little old soul. Like, we call him a little old man all the time. He just walks around with his hands behind his back, like contemplating life and, just like soul gazing with everyone he meets. So he is just such a conscious guy, to begin with. So he's very easy. He's been easy since a newborn, easy pregnancy, all of that. And so I think that for me, I've just learned so much. Like, he is my greatest teacher and he prompts me to be better every single day. And you really start to look at your own childhood traumas and your own imbalances within how you were parented when you start parenting. And I think just like my biggest belief in life, everything in moderation, which is so old school, but it's so true. And it's the same with parenting. It's not no sugar. It's not all sugar. It's not no screen time. It's not all screen time, It really is. Like, that's how we maintain balance in our lives as a human, as an adult. And that's how we can really maintain balance in our children's lives as well. And so that's the parenting approach that I'm taking, along with a couple of other things. But yeah. And so it's just honoring other parents too, because I do get worried about these children, these beautiful starseeds that have parents that are not present, that are not showing up, that are just on their devices. And then what do? They give an iPad to their child, and then their child is just addicted to Coco Melon or whatever the thing is, which is so concerning. But then I realized that it's all going to realign. Like, those children at 18, 19, 20, they're going to start to realize, I don't have any friends. I don't even know how to socially interact with others. So I want to start learning how to do that now. So I do think the elastic band is going to go all the way from one end, which is the not being present and being sucked into technology, all the way to craving authentic community, craving authentic connection, and really finding themselves potentially earlier or later in life, depending on sort of their own journey. But I'm trying to raise my children in a very neutral and sort of balanced manner. And I think for all the parents who are not necessarily doing that, I think it will rebalance eventually.
Beautifully said. And yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge you are being a beautiful mother, you and Nat. So, really honor that, and that you've taken on that responsibility, because I know that's not an easy decision and choice to make, is to, bring children into this world, especially the way the world is right now. We opened up talking about 2025, and really just to ask you, what do you feel humanity is contracted to experience from now, beginning also into 25 up until 2028?
More collapse, more polarity, more collapse, more anger. I mean, if you just base it on the US election right now, no matter who is chosen, and we're going to use chosen in a rough, loose term, but no matter who is in, okay, the other side's going to be pissed for the next 4 years, right? And that's just America. And of course, there are other dynamics that are playing out all over the world right now that are very similar. It's all just polarity, right? I mean, look at the war in the Middle East. It's the same thing. Who's the bad guy? Who's the good guy? It's all the lines are muddled, and yet every person has their own stance, and it's either one side or the other. And so we're going to see more of that. And then what I'm really feeling is between 2028 to 2030 is a significant date, but then also 2035 keeps coming up here. So 2028 to 2035, we're going to see the emergence of those new Earth solutions. They're already starting to emerge now, and they're there. They're not gaining a lot of like mainstream attraction, but they're there. And then I think we just have to, we can't really bring through the major solutions like a solution to plastic packaging. It could be biodegradable, sort of plant-based plastic packaging that just biodegrades. Fantastic. But if the plastic companies are still ruling everything, how can this little company get ahead? They can't. We have to collapse the current system. And between now and 2028, collapse, collapse, collapse. I do have a feeling there's going to be more environmental catastrophes, whether they are HARP or they're natural or they're just part of the pole shift, right? Or the solar flares. We're going to see more environmental stuff going down. We're going to see more chaos, more confusion, more wars, more of all of that before we get to a place where we're all ready to say, okay, I surrender. I give up in a sense. I'm ready for something completely different. And when we all start collectively asking for something different than what we currently have, that's when we can really make a shift, and we can gain traction that way. So I think for a lot of us who have the awareness, it's a waiting game, and it can be really tough to just sort of wait for that time to happen.
What are some pillars that encompass that different Earth, different world that we are heading toward?
Yeah, I mean, it would be all the very, of course, there's the spiritual shift, which is being more neutral, observing, taking responsibility. That was the third one in the relationships, taking responsibility for your own actions, right? In order to show up without karma. Of course, this is not your problem. This is my problem that I'm projecting on you. And so I really do think that at a spiritual level, like showing up, being communicative, being honest, being responsible, those are all things that are going to shift. And then we start to change our entire lives because we take responsibility for all the shitty stuff and all the great stuff. That's all us, which is incredible and powerful and scary. And then at a very physical level, all the pillars are all the systems, right? The religious system, the education system, the environmental system, the political system, the financial system. All of those need to shift and change in order for us to be a civilization that works together and not apart, right? We all need to step into a service to others role in order for this to really work. And then we can step into that galactic civilization energy where we can really advance and move to the next level. But we can't accept extraterrestrials as our brothers and sisters before we accept ourselves as our own brothers and sisters,
And I know you are in a big service to role yourself. So I wanted to invite you to tell the audience where they can find you, where they can connect with you, where they can, immerse themselves more into the EA universe. And then I have one little question for you at the end.
Cool. Yeah. So, just Elizabeth April on YouTube, on Google, and you'll find all my links there. But primarily my website. I've been getting shadow banned on a couple of different sites recently. So I'm not surprised. And I'm also not worried, just because we have put so much time, effort, and energy into the website platform. It's pretty much like a Netflix for EA. So you'll find so much content, obviously uncensored content there. I feel the freedom to talk about what I really need to talk about on my website versus on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or what have you. So definitely check out my website, elizabethapril.com. And I'm super excited. I am almost finished writing a book right now. So it'll be my next book. I just signed with a super aligned publisher. So it will be traditionally published. And we do have a sort of a working title for it. It'll be released around this time next year. So we're thinking October, November of 2025. And it's called Your Anxiety is Giving Me Anxiety. And the whole book is on anxiety. And it's just touching upon all of the different aspects of anxiety, from a physiological, a spiritual, and just like an everyday perspective. I am a chronic anxiety sufferer. And for me, I really wanted to deep dive into what exactly is anxiety? Why haven't we solved it? And what can we do differently that the medical field has not been doing to really overcome it? And I know that so many starseeds, so many empaths have anxiety and suffer from anxiety. So I really do feel like this book is going to help so many people. It's already helped me just by writing it. And so that's something to look out for in the next year.
Beautiful. We'll put all your links in the show notes as well. The last question I had for you is, what is the biggest fuck yes that you are actively taking action on right now in your life?
Okay, well, definitely this new book, just because I am actively writing it, and it is such a big fuck yes. And then I would say the other thing is, and this is like, I'm kind of keeping this under wraps, but I'll just mention it here because it popped in. I am currently getting, let's say, trained or tested in a blind remote viewing strategy. So I am doing military style remote viewing, double blind, and it's been such a big fuck yes. And for me, I've never really gotten real proof or validation for what I do because I just sort of tap in. But this remote viewing that I'm taking and working with a mentor it's been such a big fuck yes, because it truly validates that, yeah, like I'm a real remote viewer and I can do it completely blind, and I'm pretty good at it. So, so that's been really amazing. I think just at a very like 3D level, to get something that I do and have been doing for such a long time, to get that validated in a physical sense has been a really amazing fuck yes for me. So yeah.
Watch out. She's going to get recruited to the Avengers pretty soon.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. My dad's actually really worried. He's like, don't tell anyone because the government will take you. I'm like, Dad, you've been telling me that since I was 18. Okay. Like literally he's like, don't tell anyone, like the government's going to take, I'm like, Dad, thank you for putting the fear of God into me. But no, I'm good.
What's the wildest place you've remote viewed to?
Well, I mean, of course, I remote view the Galactic Federation mothership, right? But here on planet Earth, it's been all of the underground military bases. Like, that's what I'm really, I'm just so curious. I actually call remote viewing creeping. I'm like creeping on the military bases. So that's probably some of the wildest. Oh yeah. And then I've also been like stumbled across a cloning facility. So that was pretty wild too. But yeah, I do want to like make a video about all of my different cool remote viewing, places that I've been to. I just got to find the time, right?
So interesting. Do those places have like astral guards that don't allow
some of them
certain
do. Yeah, some of them do. The ones that are like, The ones that are doing some really shady shit have like their own military remote viewers, which I was not expecting when I showed up.
What's the password?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I've gotten myself into some tricky situations before, but luckily I'm still here to talk about it.
Beautiful. No, I mean, it's been such an honor, such a pleasure to connect with you again.
As always,
I really appreciate this friendship, and we'll have to continue these conversations down the line for sure.
For sure. Thank you so much, Emilio.
Thank you.